Holy shit balls, it's cold. What is going on, you guys? And welcome back to the channel. I gotta go get a jacket. To kick off today's video before my hands freeze off, I did an Instagram live a little while ago and it was super cool. A lot of subscribers came in the live and stuff like that. And I said on there that I didn't need my parent strut brace anymore. And then one of you guys said you wanted it. So this is super cool. This is the first time I'm doing something like this. But I'm going to the post office right now for one, to get this shipped out to one of you guys. And then to warranty my Radium TGV deletes because they're cracked. What does the Civic say? Minus 19? There is no way it's minus 19. It's like minus 30 right now. Hey, that's where I went to high school. This is a parking lot I had cops show up to, sitting on the hood of my STI. Ah, memories. Mission failed. We'll get them next time. They didn't have a box to fit the strut brace, so I gotta try and find a box somewhere to fit that thing in to get it shipped out. So I'll probably get that done tomorrow. Let's go home and work on the Subaru again. So for my Misfire issue, I got a little bit impatient and I saved a whole bunch of pins from old connectors for this car. And I was hoping one of them would fit this connector. So I actually depinned that connector on the cylinder 1 injector that was messed up, pulled back my heat shrink that I have there, and I got this wire nice and exposed. So this pin is still good, but this is the one I need to repin. So I took the pin off of there, depinned the connector, and now on my table of pins here, this is the cylinder 1 injector connector. It's already pretty messed up. The tab's busted on it. So I got a new one coming from my wire, but I was impatient. So I was like, oh, maybe I could depin it and maybe I have a pin that works. So I checked some TGV connectors that I have and then a bunch of old pins that I have lying around. And this is the pin in there that had the broken wire right at the end. And it's actually a different size than all the other pins that I have. So unfortunately, I can't use any of these. So I'm gonna have to wait for the new connector to come from my wire. I got a pigtail with the pins already installed. I think it was like 12 bucks or something like that US. So I got that coming over. I'm not gonna worry about this for now because there's no point wasting my time screwing around with it when I got a new one coming. So first thing I want to do in today's video is get my turbo back on. But before I get my turbo back on, I gotta fix that oil leak that I had on my oil drain line that you guys would have seen in my last video. And I gotta get my downpipe off because there's no way I'm getting that turbo back on if the downpipe's on there because that's a lot of weight on the downpipe from the exhaust. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is what I mean. That downpipe's just hanging here. It's all bolted up, V-banded to the exhaust all the way to the back of the car. So that's heavy and it's just gonna make putting the turbo on a pain. Before I do that though, I should show you guys the drain hose where it's leaking if I can find it in my mess here. This is the new one I cut. Oh, there it is. So I cut a new line to length and honestly, this line might leak again. I need to go get a more solid hose for oil because I think these heater hoses just get really soft over time as the oil gets hot and cold. And this was the bottom of the drain hose and there's literally a hole punctured in it from me just over tightening the piss out of the hose clamp. So I'm not gonna do that this time. We're gonna try this heater hose out. Hopefully it doesn't leak. All right, downpipe's off, and now I actually want to show you guys something real quick underneath the car. So on my Cobb catback, it actually has like a tapered donut gasket surface there. Then the ETS downpipe surface is completely flat. So the issue I'm having, which is super annoying, the gaskets I was using aren't sealing, and it's having a little tiny exhaust leak between the downpipe and the catback. As you can see on the two Tomei gaskets I was running there, how it's all black up top there. The exhaust gas was literally just blowing right past the top of the gasket. I tried using this one at first. This one didn't seal, so I doubled up on both of them, and that didn't seal. The ETS kit comes with like a nice thick gasket for that downpipe, and it sealed really good with my Tomei catback. So I might have to order another one of those, or maybe I need a donut gasket to go in there, but that doesn't really make sense to me because it's 3" to 3", so you shouldn't need a donut gasket. But maybe I need a gasket that's like donut on the tapered edge of the Cobb to flat on the ETS downpipe. I don't know. Drop a comment. Let me know what you guys think. I'm open to suggestions. But now since we got the downpipe off, let's get the turbo back on the up pipe, get it V-banded on. Then I got to get both coolant fittings on, the oil feed, and I got to put my new oil drain hose on down there and not over tighten the hose clamps this time. Okay, turbo's on, but I just found one of the sketchiest things that I have ever seen. I have no idea how this happened or what happened, but now I know why I was having clutch issues. As I tear this thing apart, everything's just coming full circle here. And I'm not even gonna rule out that this could have been my fault, because it could have, but I am like 99.9% sure that I put this plug in and I tightened it up. Before we get to that, turbo's on, coolant fittings are on, oil feed's on, oil drain's on there, and I didn't tighten the shit out of the hose clamps this time, just nice and snug so the hose doesn't move. And this turbo looks 10 times cleaner without that boost gauge on there. I just ran one vacuum line and teed it into my whole boost controller setup that I had run down there. Now let's get to the sketchy part. So when I was looking around over here, I pulled the starter out now, but I looked under the starter and you see that pin that's sticking out there? Yeah, that's definitely not supposed to be like that. That pin right there is the pin that holds your whole clutch fork in place, that engages and disengages your clutch, and it is attached to the throwout bearing. That plug that is supposed to be in the transmission here just rattled right out. I don't know where the hell it went. It's not here. I don't have one. I have no idea where it went. It's like a 14 mil hex key plug that holds the clutch pin in place. So I'm gonna get that clutch pin slid back in, because I definitely can't get it in right now because this is probably all cockeyed because the spring's on there and there's pressure from the slave on the clutch fork. So I'm gonna get that back in real quick, and then I'm probably gonna need to go to Subaru to get a new plug for that. So I looked in this bin of like spare bolts and stuff like that I got, and I have a plug here, but this was an O2 sensor plug and it is not the same thread pitch or size as that hole, but this is basically what the plug looks like for that hole. But this one's too small to fit, so I can't even put it in. That is actually insane. Like, that could have been some catastrophic failure there. If that would have fell out, clutch fork falls down while that flywheel is just spinning at engine RPM down there, she would have been fuckered. That's scary. So yeah, I'm gonna get that pin popped in and I'll show you guys how far it's supposed to be in when it's in properly. And that's what it's supposed to look like. I have a bolt threaded in there right now because that's how you're supposed to push it all the way in and pull it out. It's just an M6x1 bolt. I'll unthread it real quick just so you guys can see how far it's supposed to be in. And you can't even see how far it's supposed to be in because it's all the way in now. So that was sketchy as hell. I'm gonna have to go to Subaru and get a new plug for that, because you can't run your car without that plug. That clutch fork pin just slides out. I don't know how long mine's been like that, but I 100% guarantee that is the cause of the clutch issues I have. The issue I was having was when I would rip on it and I'd go to just like bang gears, the clutch pedal would actually come up halfway, stop, and then come up all the way, which makes sense now because that pin wasn't all the way through the clutch fork. It wasn't seated on the dowel. So then the clutch fork wouldn't have proper engagement and disengagement of the throwout bearing. I'm like moving my hands all over the place. I don't know why I do that when I talk. Anyways, I'm gonna have to get one of those plugs from Subaru. So for now, let's move on to the next thing that I need to fix on this car. Both of my AEM gauges that I have installed on the inside of the car, if you guys have not seen that video, I'll put a link up top to that. I have a boost gauge and a wideband AFR gauge, and neither of them work the way I want them to. They both work, but I'm super picky and I want them to work perfectly. So the issue that I'm having with the wideband sensor is that when I'm data logging, it's actually reading about 1 AFR higher than what the gauge is actually displaying. So what that means is the AEM gauge is working perfectly. It's reading the exact numbers the way it should be, but on my access port, the way I wired it in so that the factory ECU can see the voltage reading from the AEM sensor, I ended up having to cut that wire back and solder it again. So that signal positive wire is soldered twice, which would explain why it's reading 1 AFR higher than what it should be on the access port. The reason for that is every time you solder a wire, you're actually increasing the resistance of that wire. So the way an O2 sensor works is it sends a voltage signal to your ECU, high or low, and depending on if it's a wideband or a regular O2 sensor, a high voltage reading means rich and a low voltage reading means lean. I'm not gonna get too into depth with that, but anyways, the reason that my ECU is getting a reading that's slightly more lean than what the gauge is displaying is because I have 2 solders on the signal positive wire that goes to my ECU. So that would mean increased resistance, which means a lower voltage reading. So that is why my ECU is seeing a lower voltage reading than what the gauge is seeing. So just so you guys fully understand what I'm saying, this is the rear O2 sensor connector that I tapped into and ran the wires into the cab of the car for my wideband gauge. This white and black wire right here is my signal negative, and this white wire here is my signal positive. And as you can see on my signal positive wire, I have 2 solders in a row. So I'm gonna have to depin this connector, slide it back, get 1 solder here, and then slide the pin back in. Because honestly, it's fine like this. When you do data logs, you just have to think in your head, okay, it's 1 AFR less than what it's reading. But I want it to be perfect, so I'm gonna fix it. So I'm lucky I actually saved my old rear O2 sensor rather than just throwing it out, because the connector right here is actually the exact same and the exact same pins as this connector in the engine bay. So I'm gonna slide this sleeve down, cut these wires, depin this, and then we're just gonna slide these pins into that connector and make one clean solder. And then we'll know if it works once I start the car up. I guess I'll just run through this super fast. I was gonna time lapse it, but why not show you guys how to do this? Depinning Subaru connectors is super easy. Most connectors are super easy to depin. On this connector, there's a little plastic alignment piece on the inside there that holds the pins in. You're just gonna grab it with a pair of needle nose pliers and pull it right out. There we go. Now this is gonna be super hard for you guys to see, but on the inside, there's a little locking tab on each pin. All you're gonna do is grab a little baby screwdriver set here, grab the smallest flat blade you can, or a depinning tool if you're rich. But this is for those of you that don't have special tools. I'm gonna take the white one and one of the black ones out. That way I can distinguish between signal positive and signal negative. So basically how you're gonna do this, I got two out already because I wanted to get it out before I show you guys so I don't look like an idiot. You're gonna take your screwdriver and you're gonna shove it in and lift the tab that's holding the pin in, and you're gonna push the tab as far back as you can without breaking it. See if I can get this. There we go. And then once you do that, you're gonna get a good hold of the wire behind it and pull the wire out the backside like that. There we go. Full connector depinned. I didn't even need to do all that, but they're easy just to slide back in. Way easier to put in than to take out. I'll tell you that for free. So now since I have this one depinned, I'm gonna go depin the one in the car off camera, and then let's get some pins swapped, solder it up, and then we should be good to go. Wires are all soldered up now. Only one solder this time, not two. Both those pins fit absolutely perfect. Now I got a white and a black wire, so I know which one is signal positive and which one is signal negative. Now I got to get this taped up again, reloomed, and then plug it back in to the factory harness. And then I guess we'll know if it worked once we get the car running again. That's mint. We got her all tucked down there, zip tied, like nothing ever happened. Hopefully it works this time. That is literally a perfect example of why you save some old parts that stuff can be taken off of. Because now I got the pins put back in this one, and I'll save this one for later in case I need these two pins sometime. Before I forget about it, let's get this plastic piece shoved back in there if I can even get it in. There we go, now it's in. Now that we got the wideband fixed, hopefully, I gotta fix the other gauge that I got inside. Now, if you guys watched the last video, I explained in the last video what was going on with it. So I'm not gonna explain it again, but I do want to show you guys where I'm gonna mount it. I found this today. I thought this was super cool. But if you have an IAG competition series or maybe street series too, but don't quote me on that, AOS, there's actually a little block off plug that you put on the PCV vacuum vent on the bottom of the manifold. And I'll show you guys where that is here real quick. Right under your throttle body, right on the bottom of the manifold. And from factory, there's this little nipple that threads into there, and that is the vacuum for your PCV. And when you run the IAG AOS, you basically just thread this block off plug in there, and that port isn't used for anything. But since I don't have any other ports on my manifold, and I don't want to tee into a fuel pressure regulator line or the brake booster line, and I have all my other nipples on this manifold shaved down, so this is the last port I have left. Well, and the blow-off valve port, but I want to keep that just a straight line to the blow-off valve, so I don't have to tee in anywhere. So what I'm going to do is, since the boost gauge itself has a 1/8 NPT thread pitch, so it's not going to fit in that bung. It's just like a hot dog in a hallway. Then I found out on IAG's instructions for the AOS that this is a 1/4 NPT plug. So what I'm going to do is get a 1/4 NPT to 1/8 NPT inner diameter adapter so I can thread in a 1/4 NPT into the manifold, and then I'll be able to thread this boost sensor directly onto there. And then I'll just run the wire to here, plug it in. That way it will read vacuum in the manifold and boost in the manifold when you're under boost, which is exactly what I wanted, because before I had it mounted on the compressor housing, as you guys saw, and it was reading boost all the time because your turbo never goes under vacuum. So now I gotta go to the auto parts store and get one of those adapters. I also need to get an exhaust gasket. I need to get my TGVs warranted, and I still need so many other parts. So since I'm waiting on so many parts, that's probably where I'm gonna end this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Maybe you learned something. I don't know. If you didn't, then you probably know more than I do. But I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of advice wherever I can. And I'm trying to film everything, putting this thing back together, because I'm hoping to get this thing together before the snow goes away so we can rip it at least once in the snow. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this one. Peace out, you guys. Thanks for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Oh yeah, and you guys should subscribe too, because we're almost at 1K, so that would be pretty sick. You know what to do.